today we're talking with Dr. Janina Fariñas. She's a neuropsychologist and CEO and founder of La Cocina. Thank you, Dr. Fariñas, for being with me today. I really appreciate your time, and I'm really, really happy for the conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be with you today. I'm very excited actually about our conversation.
Thank you. So, just to honestly go straight for it, this episode is part as our listeners know is part of our mental health series, and Dr. Farin is actually going to talk about the immigrant mental health and more about La Cocina, which is a nonprofit who basically all their services are focused on Latinx, Latinos, Latinas, and community who might not have the accessibility to access for mental health resources. So for starting our conversation, let's talk about first the immigrant mental health, because before we're recording, before when we talk about what is important in mental health, and we have been talking about the importance of it, but one of the focus that I want to focus with you in this episode is mainly about the immigrants, the transition from the migration and once they arrive to the here. So why immigrants mental health should be treated as important as physical health once they arrived, this in this case focusing in the United States.
I think the primary reason why we should take it very seriously is because immigrants, and I'm an
Mm-hmm.
immigrant from El Salvador, immigrants imagine that when they come to the United States, that their life is going to be better, of
Mm-hmm.
course, than it was at home. And this is only sometimes true. And so, one of the things that I think, would be helpful for us to really consider is the way that all of the troubles that we encountered before migrating and then migration itself are reasons why our mental health could really be in an area where we want to work on it. We
Mm-hmm.
want to work on it from the perspective of our past. We want to heal our past. We want to heal our migration journey. And then we want to heal the fact that we're in a really brand new place that we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for those reasons, it's really worthwhile essentially healing all of those different pieces of trauma in our lives, of our adversity in our life, so that we can get to a place while living here that we can
Mm-hmm.
feel like productive, healthy individuals who really have left behind the traumas of our past
Mm-hmm. That's
instead of recreating patterns. Because, for example, this is a very common story. We hear this repeatedly with the immigration communities that we work with is, in the past, I may have been in an abusive relationship.
mm-hmm.
And I did everything in my power to leave that abusive relationship, right? I left that abusive relationship. I went to a new country. I took my children with me, for example. And then I found that being in the United States did not change that I ended up again in an abusive relationship, right? And so we
Mm-hmm.
see a repetition of a pattern that we really try to leave behind that doesn't get resolved just because we move to a different country.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it could get worse
Mm-hmm.
depending on how difficult our journey was, and depending on how we are doing today.
Mm-hmm.
Are we dealing, with having good employment, having good support
Mm-hmm.
systems around us? So, all of those things, all of those pieces of our lives that really need healing do not just start in the United States. They
Yeah.
started way, way before. And it's worthwhile to us to really think about that and to
Mm-hmm.
say, yeah, I actually want to be in a life and in relationships that are healthy.
Yeah.
I want to see myself as a person who's productive and capable. I
Mm-hmm.
want to enjoy a happy life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And it's really good what you point out about when someone migrate, as us being like immigrants ourselves, when we think about migrating to another country, when you arrive here, the thing is not todo color de rosa, right?
No.
How they put it, in movies, or they put it like the idea from over there. So I think it's very good that you point out that, because we see migration comes in different ways. Like there's a person who might have the privilege to migrate through an airplane, or who actually makes the trip, right? So, or if it's from not only Central America, but it comes from other parts, so it can be from boat or any other, migrations what's it called, transportation is different, right? And all of that has a different type of impact in your life, because
Yes.
as a person who I migrated with a visa, and I came here like with the privilege of an airplane, is the experience is completely different who someone who took the entire journey of going through Mexico, right?
Right.
And
That's
then
right.
yeah, Mexico is completely like, is a huge country who has, like their pros and cons, if that would say. um and we have like the difference of the reasons of migrations, right? So like you point out, like the abusive relationship, there's like lack of like economic support, like, or economic in their countries, or like violence, when it comes to like gangs or like wars. Or we have like lack of employment, and so like there's a little like there's a bunch of like little reasons why people migrate. So all of them, sometimes when they come here, it's not everything like, oh, because I couldn't find a job over there, that doesn't mean that automatically you'll find a job here.
That's right.
If you had an abusive relationship over there, it doesn't matter, like you will not have it here. It's like it at the same time is connected. Just because we tend to repeat our patterns, right?
Mhm.
And at the same times, when you come here, if you don't have the
Mhm.
privilege to be under like, you know in a residency or in an asylum status, the label of like the label of undocumented, and the lack of resources that comes with it, is a huge, just a huge, like una maleta enorme,
Yeah.
of, you know for
Yeah.
the mental health of someone. So I feel like I tend, to have this conversation with you. I very like it's interesting, like I told you before, because I'm like, as an immigrant, we both
Mhm.
know what is the journey, right? And for me, I nobody have ever told me, oh, what was going to be that impact, culture shock. That's another thing, or like the language barrier, or when you want to access things and oh, I can't because I don't have documents, is a like another things. And there's no, when you get to this country, the first thing that they do is like, oh, vete a hacerte un físico, right? Like, vete a
Right.
hacerte un físico, tienes tus vacunas, estás todo bien, tus ojos, tus dientes, and tus oídos, and everything's good. But what about my mental health? What about my mental health? Because in my case, it was like a completely 180 turnout, right? But I can only imagine for those who made the entire trip and the entire atrocities that they saw doing that.
Yeah. I think that's right on. I think you've
Hmm.
given a really good summary of the diversity that exists in migration patterns, right? And in migration reasons for migrating really vary greatly from one
Hmm.
person to the other. But if you find yourself that when you think about your migration story and you
Hmm.
think, I left my country because of some kind of adverse or
Hmm.
traumatic situation, whether that be that you were being persecuted by gangs
Hmm.
or you were in a domestic violence situation, a situation where your life was in danger
Hmm.
in some way, or you left because the political unrest or warfare was part of
Hmm.
your life, right? If you left for any of those reasons and other reasons which caused you to feel fear for a
Hmm.
long period of time in your life, you can bet your brain is pretty primed for that fear. And you will find that while your expectations of getting to the United States are that suddenly you're going to feel better, you
Hmm.
might not feel better,
Hmm.
or that your life will be better. And maybe your life is better in some ways,
Hmm.
but you might find that you're still not happy. And that
Hmm.
has more to do with mental health than it does with physical health.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
frankly, I don't separate those two because I don't
Hmm.
really think they're separate
Hmm.
from each other.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I truly think that mental health should be included with physical health, but for so many time they haven't been together.
Yes,
They
that's
treat it
right.
as different.
Forever.
Yeah, and especially this is a conversation that for like past guests that we had in this series, we've had talk about the quote unquote local label when we talk about mental health. And I
Yes.
mean, when we come, from, especially from the area of Latin America, where we think like psicólogos es para locos, that label shouldn't be even included. But yeah, when we come to here and they told you, let's say for example, told someone that like, oh, we should, you should treat your mental health, because of the journey over the entire, like, that completely changed your life or everything. That's the main thing that comes to me. I'm like, yo no estoy loco, so I feel like those type of like obstacle for our community, especially in that immigrant community, really plays a role of why so many of us don't try to seek mental health as the first step while arriving to a new place.
I think that's one of the reasons. I also think that another reason why we don't seek help is because we've never had help before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really in our culture or in our upbringing to
Mm-hmm.
ask for help. I know I can really relate to that. In some ways, when people ask me about La Cocina and people
Mm-hmm.
ask me about why I created La Cocina, I think they expect to hear, that because of the stigma or
Mm-hmm.
because of the reasons that Latinos don't seek mental health or because there aren't enough Spanish speaking therapists. And those are important reasons. But the main reason that I created La Cocina is that so families who are immigrant families like my own could have the support that my family didn't have
Mm-hmm.
when we came to the United States and before we came
Mm-hmm.
to the United States. That, in my own family of origin, there's a lot of trauma, and that trauma was already there when we
Mm-hmm.
moved, right? And it involved lots of different dynamics. I mean, yes, we lived in war torn areas, and there was a tremendous amount of persecution and danger in
Mm-hmm.
general in the whole country. But there were other things too.
Mm-hmm.
Intergenerational trauma gets passed down from one generation to the next.
Mm-hmm.
So that was already present in our lives before we came to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And moving to the United States actually made those things worse. It didn't make those things better.
Mm-hmm.
And so as the patterns repeat themselves and continue, right? One of the things that I think are really, really important is that it isn't in our culture when we live that way for
Mm-hmm.
many generations in our families. It's not in our culture to say, I need help and I'm going to go look for help. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
in our culture to run away, which is
Yeah.
appropriate. When you're trying to get away from danger, you should run away, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't leave you with a lot of resources of how to say, I need help and I'm going to go find help. It also doesn't help that there isn't a lot of help
Mm-hmm.
available that isn't really costly and that isn't in our language and that is not accessible to us, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you put those two things together, I think those are the primary reasons why Latinos tend to not seek help.
Mm-hmm.
We see, for example, a big difference in Latinos that were born in the United States. They're not immigrants, right? So they're first
Mm-hmm.
generation, and they really end up understanding from an early age that mental health care is just part of their lives. It's available
Mm-hmm.
to them at school, maybe not broadly, but it's
Mm-hmm.
available, right?
Okay.
And maybe it's not culturally aligned, so it's not quite right for the culture,
Mm-hmm.
but they know it's there. And so we see a very big difference as the generations kind of move away from immigration.
Mm-hmm.
So immigration turns out is a really important reason to think about what parts of my life do I want to heal that
Mm-hmm.
I would like to not only heal for myself, but I want to heal for my family.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that that's really good point that you point out. Like, not only seeing the mental health, like the healing part and the, resources. Of course, in Central America, there's not a lot of resources at this moment that I know of.
No.
But if you would have had those resources, and sorry, I'm like trying to make it say, if you would have accessibility to those resources before and after, there will be a completely different change, of, you know personally, on the mental state of your entire family, you know
Right.
and in the language, because of course when we migrate, like, it's not that automatically we learn English. It's an entire process for us to even try to be confident in our language. So yes, like you said, yeah, one thing is to have resources in Spanish in this case, um, but sometimes I try to think about, for example, and I see this mainly from the area of Guatemala. When people migrate, and they don't speak English, or they don't speak Spanish. They speak a like indigenous language. So
That's
that's another way of like I'll say like another traumatic way, because like even in
right.
their own country they don't have as much resources, so because of the language that that they speak their mother language, but this country has forced them to try to learn the other one, and when they
Yeah.
try to seek help or even migrate, the resources are even more limited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is so frustrating to us. And it's such a reality,
Hmm.
that it's just a fact that we don't, in fact, have enough Spanish speaking therapists alone, much less therapists that speak Mayan dialects, for example,
Hmm.
or Mayan languages, or who speak other
Hmm.
languages, right, from
Yeah.
other countries of origin. So you're absolutely right. It's a tremendous barrier to
Yeah.
getting help. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you, we talk about accessibility and we know what is important, but like, how can we work together to make accessibility? Not only by having in more resources in Spanish, but how can we make those accessible once, let's say, for example, they arrived um, to the United States in this case, or if they're like in those horrible conditions. I'm sorry. It's just like I just think right now like the conditions that I have had them. So how can we have those type of resources more accessible for them?
I think we need to change the way we think about Latinx mental health in
Mhm.
general. So, what I mean by that is, it goes without saying that traditional models of mental health
Mhm.
really were not designed for Latino communities, right? So, they
Mhm.
were really designed very specifically for a predominantly white, predominantly wealthy,
Mhm.
actually, community. And so, we need to think of mental health services as the possibility that our own communities could participate even in designing them. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that, for example, is for example, in a mom community, so in
Mhm.
a Guatemalan mom community, for example, where we know we're not going to suddenly have a lot of therapists who speak
Mhm.
mom, right? That we need to think about how peer support models can really help
Mhm.
with that, right? There are a lot in our community. There's a fairly significant mom community,
Mhm.
and this is one of the ways that we've seen some change around how that community receives access.
Mhm.
um, we have had opportunity for community members that are bilingual in that community. They
Mhm.
speak mom and they speak Spanish, for example, to go through services and then serve as peer supports within their community.
Mhm.
And those peer supports really do build a scaffolding around the community. And as long as those peer supports and those peers, right, that
Mhm.
are supporting those other community members are also receiving support,
Mhm.
through La Cocina, for example,
Mhm.
we see that they can do a great deal of important work. So, peer support and peer mentorship work in mental health,
Mhm.
I think, is an essential area of growth for us and one that can really help with accessibility. I think the other thing that helps with accessibility is if funders, when they give money to
Mhm.
programs, they think about this, so
Mhm.
that they think really we're going to fund equitably. We're going to fund in a way that allows those communities that don't have any access to be able to access the programs
Mhm.
that are available, right? Because for us, what that does is if we have funding and we have appropriate funding, we can actually hire individuals, right?
Mhm.
Interpreters, other peer supports, trained peer supports. We can invest directly in those communities, which is really important to do as well.
Yeah.
So I see that as a big shift in mental health care,
Mhm.
right? Where we would not be thinking only as a model where the only way of getting better is a therapist and a
Mhm.
client, right?
Mhm.
But that we do that with groups and we do that with peer supports and we do it with multiple levels of support, right? So if a community member is receiving individual support or group support, the peer mentor also gets supported. And then the therapist providing some of
Mhm.
that consultation and support also gets supported, right? And then
Mhm.
there's just a very healthy ladder of support that is
Mhm.
given to everybody. So much of the problems that we see arise around becoming really, I think, unhealthy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about it as health in general, but unhealthy in the way we experience our relationships, in the way
Mm-hmm.
that we are able to do our work in the world, in the way that we experience ourselves, right? Do
Mm-hmm.
we feel okay? Like, is our internal landscape matching the way that the external world sees us, for example? Like, all of these different pieces are largely
Mm-hmm.
based on how much healthy support we have.
Yeah.
So building those healthy supports don't always have to be by a single therapist. We could really be creative
Mm-hmm.
about how that gets created.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think like I like how you say it, like, because it's sometimes, like I said before, we think about mental health, we go often just go therapist automatically. It's like our mind just shift at like the point. But in reality, it's true. Like those type of forms of treating mental health hasn't been designed for our community, you know. One,
No,
not even accessible and not even designed for us, you know.
right.
Is at the same time is hard for us, like you said, for us to say I need help. It takes longer that maybe someone else who might have the access and, you know, the monetary support to do it. And at the same time, like, if you can one thing that I like about La Cocina that I found interesting is how you combine traditional with non-traditional. And I think that's what you said about like the support, because finding support means like I'm not alone in this, you know, like I'm not the only one. I have support. If I need someone to talk about, like to go and talk, I'll go and find that support, because the support was give, you know, like is
Right.
there, you know, is there, rather than, you know, I see it, for example, and this is just an example, I'm not saying everybody, but like on the male side for the Latinx community, they tend to be more close, right?
Yeah.
They're like, they don't want to show like feelings or sentimiento, or like how they're feeling, or how, you know, the interactions, right? And I feel it's because of that that our culture has made like they need to be tough, they need to be like no se que no le caiga ninguna lágrima, for example, which I think
Sí, no
is
llores.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's such a stereotype and stigma that I like, why would you do that? Like male, I feel like sometimes, yeah, we think about like all this um instance, like kids, females, you know, the LGBT community, everyone, you know. But sometimes I'm like, oh, male, sometimes they're the first one to not accept, you know, they're the one que hay que estarle dando y dando, tienes que buscar ayuda, you know, and even trying for, you know, said a dad or tío or someone like that. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask, because as a form for the cocina provides a tradition and non-traditional,
Yeah.
how can those type of forms of mental health can help in like try to get more, oh, let me put it in a better way, how can we start talking, especially for those who might reject the idea, but how can we start having this conversation about mental health when given the opportunity that of different type of forms of treating mental health.
Yeah, I think it needs to start with a message, in all honesty, from the community of mental
Mm-hmm.
health providers, clinics, everybody out there who thinks they know mental health, I think, needs to reconsider what they think they know in terms of our populations.
Mm-hmm.
And then it starts, I think, with a message of understanding in general, right? That suggests that forms of support, people can be supported in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
different ways.
Mm-hmm.
People heal actually all the time, and it's not just through therapy. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there are people who utilize a class to heal certain
Mm-hmm.
parts of their lives, or some people utilize the support of a grandmother or the support of a
Mm-hmm.
friend, right? Or some people find that going on a type of pilgrimage in their lives is
Mm-hmm.
really healing, right? So support can come in different ways. It can come in non-traditional ways, meaning it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't always have to come in the form of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, human beings get to decide how they're going to use those supports.
Mm-hmm.
And so making sure that there is a variety and an inclusive point of view around what we think is supportive to people, it requires a reframe, right? It's part of why our organization is called La Cocina and not
Mhm.
mental Latinx mental health center,
Yeah.
for Colorado or something like that.
Mhm.
That is one of the reasons. Most people think it's the stigma, and there is some of that, but
Mhm.
also there's a very direct connection for Latinos around sitting in the kitchen to
Mhm.
discuss problems, or sitting in the kitchen
Mhm.
to discuss joyful moments, or sitting in the kitchen to discuss something that you didn't really want to discuss, but you're having to discuss it, right?
Yeah.
So there's something about that that I think everybody can connect to. And I've heard our clients even say things like, aquí en la cocina estamos cocinando nuestros problemas.
Mm.
So, there is a way to think about this that is about the system of mental health care and
Mhm.
how they present mental health care services that really is inclusive, and suggest to our clients and our folks that it is okay if the ways you seek support are different than therapy. That's
Mhm.
okay. Let's just make sure you get the support you need, not the
Yeah.
support I want as a therapist, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that's a very good point, and like especially to start with a conversation, right? If
Yeah.
maybe a therapist like te asusta, because I have told you this before. I think I shared the story about this. I really bad experience that I had with a therapist back in my country when and
Yeah.
it for me that experience made me like I don't want to go to another therapist. You know what I mean? Because like
Right.
going just thinking about the instance like of the emotion that I felt, I don't want to go through that. So seeking support, for example, and this is just an example. I don't know if you can tell me, but once I migrated here, like the disconnect with my dad was completely like separated, right? But my support was always my mom. As when I was back in Honduras, I wasn't as close with my mom that I am now. Like my mom is not my best friend, for example. So like my mom for me felt the need of needing a dad, right? Of course everybody needs a dad. Of course I'll miss it, you know, but it didn't I didn't feel like I was sad constantly the moment that I opened and I was willing to have more conversations with my mom, and my mom was opening to tell me like I love you or stuff like that, things that she wasn't as consistent when I was back home, you know what I mean? So I see that when I was reading about La Cocina in your page, and I was like, well, it's true. Like sometimes when, especially like that, if I recall on my experience, I don't want to go back to a therapist, right? Like that was my first
Of
thing
course.
when I don't is it the like I just don't want to go through that again. But at the same time, I'm in a need of healing. Like I'm in a need of healing. I'm in a need of this transition, moving to places, and if we start with that support of the support that you have someone that you can go and like let your thing go, for example, like nomás desahogarte como Diana.
Yeah.
And in most of the time it happens at the kitchen. And then that's why everything happens at the kitchen, eating or cocinando. So I think that I really like the idea of having those non-traditional supports.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, what other non-traditional forms of mental health does the Cocina provide for your clients at this moment, if someone else is interested?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do is we provide opportunities through different ways of listening to our community. So
Mm-hmm.
we're always listening to our community and the community needs. One of the things that we've done and continue to do right now, actually, is, for example, around mask anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is difficult for some people to understand, but
Mm-hmm.
actually, for some people, especially women who have suffered sexual abuse, masks are a source of and a trigger of trauma, actually.
Really?
And yeah, because it's like, a mouth
Mm-hmm.
over,
Oh yeah.
a hand over
Mm-hmm.
your mouth. Yeah. So it brings up a lot of traumatic memories, and it is a huge trigger for some people, for
Mm-hmm.
us, a percentage of our population. And so we find that those people tend to, because they have to wear a mask, right? They tend to wear their mask really low. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's because, they feel like that way they can breathe. And it's not that a mask doesn't let you breathe, it's the anxiety that goes with
Yeah.
it, right? It feels like your air
Mm-hmm.
is being cut off. And so, a non traditional form of support that we offer is we have like a 3-part series where
Mhm.
folks get to do some mindfulness work around mask, and they get to do some healing, and they get to just sign up for that. Anybody can sign up for that. It's not therapy, it's more
Mhm.
like a class, really.
Mhm.
And you get to work through some of that mask anxiety.
Mhm.
Another really good example, actually, is we have a program that's a collaboration with doulas. It's called the Cultura Curabelli program,
Mhm.
and it's for women who are pregnant who really are struggling with substance misuse, for example, during pregnancy. And the program really doesn't focus on therapy specifically. It focuses on mandala art, so on
Mhm.
art that's related to our cultures, to our indigenous cultures of
Mhm.
origin, right? And how that art actually can be a source of reclaiming your cultural identity in some
Mhm.
way.
Mhm.
um, we have also a youth support group. Actually, it's all for
Mhm.
Latinx youth that, instead of focusing on therapy for reducing anxiety, also focuses on culturally relevant ways of claiming your Latinx identity and your intersecting identities that go
Mhm.
along with that, right? So it really depends on what we're hearing from the community, how we're structuring some those non-traditional forms of support.
Mhm.
But they're always, in all honesty, they're always usually the ideas of our own community members who
Oh.
say to us, "Oh, we really need you to do this," or "We really need you to do that." And they're bringing in ideas about, even recently, we've also heard a lot about people who really want to consult with a curandera, for example.
Oh.
And for that particular group in the community, which may feel very different perhaps than a
Mhm.
faith based group, right? For that particular group, making sure that that's available to them is so much about mental health, also.
Mhm.
And for a faith based group, maybe that what they really want to see happen is like a day long pilgrimage that they can
Mhm.
participate in with a faith leader, with
Mhm.
somebody who really is intersectional in the way that they think about mental health and faith.
Mhm.
We've also made those opportunities available to our community. So you never know, right? Which
Mhm.
one a community member is going to go, that's the one for me. And then
Yeah.
because of their intention, they'll be able to connect to that and heal in some
Mhm.
way.
Yeah, I think that is amazing. I didn't know about, the mask one. Like that's
Yeah.
to me like I was like we're having a year in the pandemic, and I'm like, well, I have never heard it, and now I understand, like, yeah, because you feel like something's on top of you. So like
It's
that can make trigger people, and that is like a good way to like not put it as like therapy, but to go through it and try to become more, I'm not gonna say like become more comfortable with it, because if you have a trigger that will, yeah, but at least start the journey of healing, through that. And all the curandera part, and then like, because like you said, there's some more people who are going to be more lenient to faith and other people who are more willing to be more open. So I think that having those resources available for everyone, sorry, moví algo aquí en la mesa, but having those resources available for everyone, I think is amazing, because like when you were saying that, I'm like, wait, why would we don't know about this? Like when we know about mental health, we're still like terapista, like el psicólogo.
sí,
Yeah,
a puro tubo,
I
terapista. O sea, no
yeah.
wonder our community's like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then at the same time, like terapista money. It's like, you know,
Mhm.
the amount of money, that you have to pay. So how to know, like, the youth, for the pregnant people, like art. I sometimes I tend to say like those are non, traditional, that if you do it like in a group, like for example, Voy de la Cocina, can be very helpful, because you can find
Yes.
someone that can be your support, and not only a friend, someone you can talk to, but say for example, someone that might not want to get out of their houses, right? For example,
Yeah.
a form of art is actually a good thing to like,
Oh my gosh.
relieve stress,
Incredible.
or like being like more peaceful, in your mind. One thing that I was talking with one of the other guests was about dancing,
Hmm.
like dancing
Yes.
classes. And
Yes.
I was like, I dance all the time, and I understand when she said it to me. I was like, I understand it because I felt the same way, but I never understood, like because nobody tells you like going for a walk, going for like any sport, or like having un grupo de jóvenes working for certain things, or like a class will make you start um you know your journey to healing, and at the same time working. It works as a therapy, but we don't know, like you're doing something, but you don't know you're actually working as a therapist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and also it isn't considered like in the world of therapy, it isn't
Mm-hmm.
considered therapy, right? But it is
Mm-hmm.
certainly therapeutic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it matters to our clients. It really, really matters. We hear this all the time of clients who use those opportunities to heal. Then they also consider, like, at some point, they're evaluating themselves, right? And
Mm-hmm.
saying, I actually think I need more. I do need therapy, right? And then
Okay.
for others, that's enough. So this is a much, in my view, this is just much more respectful
Mm-hmm.
than having an assumption that therapy is the solution, right?
Yeah.
And just really assumes, I think, that clients actually know what they want
Yeah.
and what they need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, I'm not like a specific someone, but like I would say, like, if you know what you're going through, if you start, let's say for example, going to one of your classes, for example, like the pregnant woman that you said about art, maybe that person didn't know, like, the battle of like battling of their identity, that
Exactly.
happens so much. And it may be, after, so many women experience postpartum syndrome. I think that's the name
Yeah,
of it.
postpartum
Yeah.
depression. Yeah,
Yeah.
postpartum, yeah, mood disorders. Yeah.
Yeah. um Having, if I'm just putting it like an example, trying to say like it's horror here. um if the person went through this type of like support, after that she will know that she has a support. You know what I mean? What happened is with pregnant women that I tend to see, especially on my friends, that when they go through that, they feel they're alone. And once they have the baby,
Yes,
they
that's
feel
right.
they continue alone, even though their partner is still there. So
Yeah.
that feeling of feeling like alone, you don't have support. When you have access to this, say for example, going to paint or going to this type of classes, you'll find a community of support that once you have your baby, you'll be able to know that you have support, and maybe if you're feeling that postpartum, depression, you will detect it and you would like to go and seek help. You know what I mean? Instead of just saying like I'm alone.
Right. It also, honestly, it also works in the direction of our peers, right? So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, especially women, but a lot of
Mm-hmm.
women who are in that situation will actually, they also know other women, right,
Mm-hmm.
who are also feeling isolated and
Mm-hmm.
lonely, and they'll bring them along, right? So there is
Mm-hmm.
an approach to this is about la comadre or la
Mm-hmm.
abuelita or la tia, or, anyone who, in some ways, when you really understand what they're going through, you are concerned about them.
Yeah.
Understandably, you're concerned, and so you want to get them some support, and that's great as well.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned traditional ways of kind of bringing up our boys, right? Our
Mm-hmm.
Latino boys, and
Mm-hmm.
especially boy, like male identified, right? Like male
Mm-hmm.
identity inside of Latino communities. And it is interesting. Um, there is a lot of fear there,
Mm-hmm.
actually, about receiving services,
Mm-hmm.
because it tends to be related to, I'm supposed to be like this guy that
Mm-hmm.
presents in a particular way. And it's really scary to me for someone to look under the surface, right? For
Yeah.
someone to see what's really down there. So I think you describe it very well. And for us, one of the things that we've learned is that men can actually do things together that they find really
Mm-hmm.
helpful and therapeutic. And it isn't therapy. It could be a soccer league, or, it
Mm-hmm.
could be a way of playing a game together, or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. That's really kind of team based, that has very similar effects to group therapy, but is
Mm-hmm.
not therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I have seen like especially like veo ligas de personas ya mayores, like they're like dads already like playing, and then, like there then there's the kids and then there's the dads, right? They continue going to that. But what they don't know is that actually like it's like a little exit that you go and they're headed in the game, you know what I mean? So that is therapeutic. But yeah, that is so true. Right now when you start soccer, I'm like, yeah, that's true. So I have seen so many instances of people going to actually play, or for example, like la carne asada that I
La
see.
carne asada.
Yeah,
Right.
when the usually the dads are the one on the side cooking the meat, but I feel like that type of connection and cooking is for them to have this instance of like, okay, I'm doing this, but at the same time it works as a therapy, but it's not therapy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. So I'm sorry if I went to like rumble.
No, no, you're
No, but
perfect.
I'm trying to figure it out and put like instance, because I know it's very important for our community to know that those resources are available. And if they're not based in Colorado, like, for La Cocina, maybe there's an organization close to where they live, but at the same
Yeah,
time understand that having those type of activities, having those type of supports are very important. That maybe in our community the access is not there at this moment, and hopefully in the years to come will be there, but knowing that mental health is as much as important as physical health.
absolutely. It really, really is. And I would say to anyone in the community that is listening to this
Mm-hmm.
and who says, well, I maybe go to a family resource
Mm-hmm.
center, but I don't think they have these types of programs, ask for them.
Mm-hmm.
Ask for them. Tell the people that you're working with, or that you know somebody who's working with an organization in your community.
Mm-hmm.
Ask for programs that really align with you and with the things that you want to see happen.
Yeah, definitely. Because I feel when we ask for them, if we say that we need it, maybe you're the one like, okay, maybe we should do this to make it accessible because I really think that will be benefit from it. But maybe others will benefit from it, and that will make
Yes.
one of the things that I was actually talking in the episode before you with the guest before you was about when someone seek help. It's como un efecto domino. If someone in your family see you that you're getting better, that they will seek help and the other person will seek help, and that's what I would love to see in my community.
I love that. I really loved even just the image of that is so
Mm-hmm.
exciting to think about. I can really relate to that also. I mean, in La Cocina, we have really seen
Mm-hmm.
that. La Cocina started with 25 families 4 years ago. There were 25 families who really were very much okay with saying we need help. But before very long, like,
Mm-hmm.
within months, it was more like 75 families, and then it was 100 families. And so the what you are speaking about is very
Mm-hmm.
real, and I think works for our community, because we do want to bring people along, right? We do
Mm-hmm.
want to kind of all be in community together and support each other. We care about each other. We care about la vecina, and we care about, la comadre. We really do.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're describing, I think, is exciting. I love it. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I would love to see it, because I've been like, when he was playing to me, I'm like, yes, like when I, because es lo que a uno le da miedo, in our community. If we see someone, oh, the person's getting help and she actually feels better, I would love to feel that same way, and that will make it less scary, as saying of me coming to tell you, seek help. It's
That's
less.
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So we have also a saying that we use a lot in our
Mm-hmm.
programming, which is pedir ayuda es de valientes. To ask for help is
Mm-hmm.
for courageous people, because it is true, that in our
Mm-hmm.
community, sometimes people think, oh, I'm going to appear weak if I ask for help. But it's actually the opposite,
Yeah.
because the fact that you're afraid to ask for help really tells you fear is an opportunity to be courageous. And in this case, asking for help is truly courage. It's an
Yeah.
act of courage. So go be courageous.
Yes, yes. I love the saying. I'm actually gonna put it as your quote, because I love the saying. But thank you, Doctor, Fariñas, I would like to ask you, do you have anything else that you would like to add or anything?
Mm, I don't know. Anything else you think we should cover before we end?
I don't know. I think you cover almost everything and more.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, because I was like, I had like the question about what is la cocina, but you actually replied like the entire thing before. So I was like, I think we cover everything, but no, I just wanted to say, thank you for coming to talk with me to make this episode happen. Because as I talked to you before, this series I created for having that, for making it accessible to others. So I really appreciate your time. And if you, as the listener, you're close to Colorado, if you would like to, see the services, all the information for La Cocina will be linked down below. Also, Dr. Farinas is going to be with us in the panel on May 29th. So if you have any questions that you want to ask specifically to her, or anything you want to continue the conversation, please, there will be an option in the link down below where you can submit all the questions, and we'll see you on May 29th.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute joy to be with you today.
No, it's a pleasure for me.